Today's video is very different from my normal style of content. This is a day in the life of a visual effects artist. I'm going to be taking you into the office with me today to show you my day at work, give a little tour of the office and the space that I work in. I've been given permission to do a breakdown of one of the comps from the recent Amazon commercial that I worked on as a VFX lead. And then at the end I'll be answering some questions that were asked in a Q&A on Discord about what it's like to work as a VFX artist. So here we go, let's see where the day begins. Whenever I'm working in the office, my day begins by cycling to work. We have a hybrid working system, so I tend to work from home a couple of days a week and then go in 2 or 3 times a week as well. I live out here in East London and the office is a bit more central, so it takes me about 25-30 minutes to get in on the bike. I much prefer this to taking public transport. It's nice to do a bit of exercise in the morning. When I get to the office, we have some really nice bike storage and showers in the basement, so I can get in, lock my bike up, and then have a nice shower and get ready for the workday. And then this is me arriving at the office. I came in through the basement entrance so I could lock my bike up, but this is what the office looks like if you come in through the front door. We have a really lovely bar and reception area, which is where most of production work. There's a couple of colour grading suites up here and a meeting room, and we're also really fortunate to have our own cinema in the office. Then downstairs is where most of the VFX magic happens. We've got some flame suites, which is where I spend a lot of my time, especially during client presentations. Then we also have an open area, which is where people can sit from all departments. Once I get to my desk, I tend to log on, have some breakfast, and then check my messages and see if anybody's sent me anything important. From here, the day starts properly and I can start doing my job as a compositor, which is the perfect segue into the next section. What you're looking at here is the Nuke script for one of the biggest shots on an Amazon commercial that I worked on last month. I was fortunate enough to go on set for this, and I was also the VFX lead and the only compositor on the job, so I comped all of the shots. And I've been given special permission to do a breakdown of this shot for this video, which is really exciting because normally I can't show the kind of stuff that I do at work due to NDA regulations. So this is a pretty unique behind the scenes look at what goes into a professional composite on a large scale commercial. So first of all, I'll just play the shot and you can see what's going on. The idea is these beams of light are bursting out of the Amazon box. The box is fully CG and there's a load of other VFX stuff going on in this obviously, like lens flares and smoke. So I'm going to go through and break down all of the different layers. Starting off at the top, this is what the plate looks like. As you can see, we filmed with a lot of practical lights. So there's some lights inside of the box, and we also have these LED Astera tubes that are really good because you can program animation into them. So we were able to animate the lighting interaction to move upwards, which gave the practical lights some movement and embedded the VFX in really well later on. One of the first problems we encountered with this shot is that the client felt there was too much blue spill coming from the practical lights. So this first group of nodes you can see here is actually a color grading pass that was exported from DaVinci Resolve, where they sucked all the blue out of the plate, so it basically completely desaturated the blue and the purple channels. This is what it looks like with a bit of a grade on it in Nuke, and then I'm using a very feathered mask just to put that back on top with a key mix. Then the next thing I'm doing here was one of the more complicated parts of this shot, and it's a bit of an invisible effect because once it's done, you'll never know. What's going on here is, as well as the lighting interaction from the practical lights, we also had someone using a leaf blower to blow the girl's hair, as you can see here. This wasn't automatically timed or anything, it was just done manually by someone triggering it as close as they could to when the lights came on. And unfortunately, the take that the director liked most was one where the leaf blower actually came in a little bit late. So you can see the practical lights actually come on about 7 or 8 frames before the wind kicks in. So what I had to do for this shot that was actually quite complicated was I took some of the frames before the lights came on and then used various techniques of distorting and warping and tracking the clean plate into the later bits of the shot and then dissolving it off until the timing of the leaf blower and the lights matched. This first one here was for the girl, and it was just a case of taking a still frame of her and then grid warping it slightly throughout the shot. The more complicated one was on the guy because he's actually taking a step forward in the shot as this is all happening. What I decided to do was use smart vectors to track that clean frame onto him as he's walking forward. If I play it, you can see on a lot of the frame it does some really crazy stuff, like it warps his face in a really odd way, but it worked quite well on his legs and lower body, so I soft matted them out again using a mask. So now I've rebuilt most of the things in the shot that have that annoying blue light on it that comes on too early. And what I can do from here is keep them on for longer and then dissolve them off once the practical leaf blower kicks in. And this is the before and after. Next up, I'm just using the clean plate that we shot to remove the practical lighting tubes from the frame. On set, once we'd got the main take, I just asked the lighting crew to move the practical lights off to the side slightly and then run the same animation on them again, so that we then had a plate of what was behind the lights when they're covering it that I could then put in later. This is what the render for the CG box looks like. This was tracked into the shot and animated, and then I also got a lighting pass that was a separate render for the interactive light from the beams coming out of the box, and then lots of glows and things coming from inside the box as well to give it a bit of life. Speaking of bright lights, this is what that render looks like. This was from Cinema 4D, and it's essentially loads of passes of different beams coming out. The renders on their own look fairly crude, and once you put all the comp stuff on top, they really come to life. It's basically just loads of straight lines that have some noise running through them, and they've got various different colours. Then I've got a hero one, which is for the core, that gives it a bit of thickness and intensity towards the centre. There's lots of colour grading going on here, so I'm using a couple of masks to make them hotter at the base when they're coming out the box, and then they get a bit darker towards the top. Then these grade and saturation nodes are making sure that they're exactly the right colour for the Amazon blue, which we were trying to match. And then I start to put some glows and stuff on it just to give it a bit of life, because it's obviously a very intense light source. Behind these lines there's also some glows, and I multiplied some smoke over this to give it some movement and make it look a bit more interesting. This is just a 2D element of some smoke. I time offset it and retimed it slightly to get it to match the speed and intensity of the stuff that was coming out of the box. And then I took the render of the lines and blurred it loads and multiplied the smoke over the top of this. If I play it here you can see what I mean. Then next up there's some particles that are also added coming out of the box. This is quite subtle and it just gives it again some more texture. So there's 4 different passes of the particles in this. I'm grading each of them slightly differently so they're all slightly different brightnesses and colours. After this there's a slightly different render that's also from Cinema 4D. This was from a different CG artist. This is for the lights that go along the seam of the box just before it bursts open. Then we got some roto. She needs to go on top of the CG box once it's all added in. I outsourced most of this, so we sent out some roto for her hair and her body and her shoulder. And then I did a little bit myself as well, so I just rotoed her arm when it's in front of the box, just because that was really quick to do. When all of that gets combined, it looks like this. So I now have a nice cutout of her that I can put on top of all the VFX that have been added so far. And then we get on to the fun stuff, lens flares and lens dirt. First off, I'm adding a little bit of camera shake. So as the box explodes open, there's a bit of like a rumble feeling in the shot, which just gives it some life. Then I've got a couple of lens dirt images. I'm doing the same thing as the glow, where I'm blurring the footage loads and then multiplying these lens dirt images on top of that. And I used an expression on the merge node just to make them flicker ever so slightly as well. And then as well as the lens dirt, I put some actual lens flares on top. This is just built from a load of different lens flare images that we had in our 2D library. So I just took some of the frames that I liked from this, frame held them so they're just a still frame. So this is each of them on their own, and then I start to combine them all one by one until it builds up to a really nice flare element. And then this gets plussed on top as well with the flicker that was also on the lens dirt. And that is the last thing I did on this shot before rendering it for the final version. There's probably a lot more VFX in this than you realised, especially with all the cleanup and everything. But overall, the result is just a really fun VFX shot. I had a lot of fun comping this one. Now for the next part of the video, I'm going to be answering some questions that people asked me on Discord about working in VFX. So one of the questions, are you scared of AI taking your job? I already use Copycat quite a bit, which is the machine learning tool in Nuke. So that is for mainly for matte generation. I use it a little bit for cleanup as well. But yeah, quite often I'm using it essentially in the place of roto. We also use Midjourney and stuff. Not so much of it is for the compositing stage, but I think a lot of the pipeline here that utilizes it is for stuff like previs and concept art and just like getting ideas together without having to go down the route of getting someone to spend 3 days making something. How did you get your job? When I was leaving college, essentially the options were go to university or go into like an immediate internship or an apprenticeship or something. I felt like I already kind of knew enough about After Effects and Blender that I didn't necessarily think I would benefit that much from going to uni. What ended up happening is I applied for an apprenticeship. So I went along for the assessment day. All the recruiters sat in a semicircle and watched all the people that got selected do a team building exercise. It was very competitive. I think over 500 people applied and they shortlisted the top 14. After we did the team building exercises, we did a little kind of speed dating thing where we went around and had 2 minutes with each company. The next morning, someone from the mill rang me to say, we'd like to offer you the job, which was really cool. So I started off there as an apprentice. It was meant to be for 2 years. I finished the apprenticeship in 18 months. That was kind of the beginning of it all, I suppose. What are the best places to apply for internships/apprenticeships, and what should we know about applying for them? A lot of it is just online. The one that I found was by a company called NextGen. For other parts of the UK or internationally, I'm not so sure, but I imagine there are similar schemes. I just Googled VFX Apprenticeship London. It was one of the first things that came up. I'd imagine if you go on LinkedIn and you look at companies' websites, quite often they advertise when they're looking for apprentices and things, so LinkedIn is quite a good place to try and find something to apply for as well. Do you work long hours? Not so much anymore. Coffee and TV is actually pretty good in terms of looking after people. We have a system called Doyles, which stands for days off in lieu, and that basically means that if you work overtime, so say you work a weekend or you work a few lates, you get a day back annual leave or on holiday. In terms of how much time I actually work, the end of the jobs can get a little bit busy. On average, I'd say a lot of the time now I finish on time, and if I have to work late, it's till like 8 or 9 o'clock. It's pretty good. I do the occasional day at a weekend. It's pretty rare, but I'm very comfortable. Like, I feel like my work-life balance these days is very in my own hands. I don't feel overworked at all, which is really lovely to be able to say. What is your favourite job that you've worked on? There's probably a few. It's difficult to pick one because there's been lots and I would like them for different reasons. I'd say if I had to pick one, my all-time favourite would be I worked on the advert that was released for the Wizards Unite mobile app game. So I spent about 6 weeks doing Harry Potter spells and CG Dementors. It was pretty nuts, and I'm a massive Harry Potter fan. Harry Potter is one of the reasons I got into the visual effects industry because I liked those films so much. And so to be able to work on something that was like officially Harry Potter branding by Warner Brothers was very exciting. What does your day consist of in terms of tasks? To be honest, it varies a lot. It depends on the day. So for example, today we had a call in the morning with the director of the advert that I'm currently working on, and then the clients came in, so I had 6 people sat in the room on the sofas over here, and basically I sat in this seat here, and then they sat there on the sofas and watched what I was doing on the screen, and we basically played through the advert, discussed sort of where we're at, and it was like a progress update essentially. That is specifically for my job role as a lead, so not all artists have to do that. That's just the job of a lead, is to like do the client presentations and director calls and things and talk through the process and have a lot of the creative discussions. The day-to-day, obviously, my primary role is I'm a compositor, a Nuke artist, so I do a lot of compositing. And then also equally as a lead, it's my job to run the timeline, so I have the edit and I drop all the VFX shots into it as we're going throughout the job. I send whips on a regular basis, so we export like progress updates of where we're at. Occasionally I go on the shoots. If it's something that I'm working on and we think it would be really beneficial for the lead to also be on the shoot, then I try and go on the set so that I'm there the whole way through the process, which makes the post-production a little bit easier. Sometimes if you're part of conversations on the set with the directors or the agency, then you just go into the post a bit more well-informed, which can be very beneficial. Then at the end of the day, myself and a few others were able to go to the Music Video of the Year awards, which was a real privilege. I'd be lying if I said I didn't slightly handpick this day to choose for this video, because obviously this is the more glamorous side of VFX. We were nominated for Best Visual Effects in a Music Video for our work on Stormzy's Toxic Trait. We didn't win, unfortunately, but it was lovely to be able to go, and it's always fun to be able to celebrate your work at these kind of events. After that, I made my way home, and that's where this video ends. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this was insightful into what it's like to work in the visual effects industry. Leave a comment if there's anything else you'd like to see. Maybe I can film another one at some point. And until then, I'll see you in the next video.